Welcome back to another episode of our podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Vishal Sir, a solicitor advocate and a triple qualified lawyer with qualifications in England, India, and Ireland. Vishal Sir holds higher rights of audience to appear before the senior courts in England and Wales, as well as the Courts of AIFC in Kazakhstan. He is also an accredited Tribunal Secretary impaneled with both the Hong Kong International Arbitration Centre and the Australian Centre for International Commercial Arbitration. Additionally, he is the Senior Editor of Law, Practice and Procedure of Arbitration in India, published by LexisNexis. Vishal Sir's legal expertise includes advising private and state parties in domestic and international arbitration proceedings, managing complex cross-border disputes, and representing clients in matters of debt recovery and professional negligence. Throughout his international career, he has worked as tribunal secretary in multi-million-dollar disputes across Singapore, Malaysia, Africa, and the UAE. Let's welcome Vishal Sir to the podcast as we explore his journey and his deep insights on arbitration. Welcome, sir, to Brief Encounters. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much. Shreya. I believe I'm honored to be here. And it is indeed an excellent initiative that you people have started with this Project LLM. I myself are always looking out for opportunities to provide a lending hand to anyone who's looking to study abroad or who's trying to break through any of the doors in foreign legal markets. So I always jump on the opportunity to help anyone and everyone I can. And I'm hoping with this podcast, with everyone listening to my journey and learnings from my journey, I'll be able to make some difference to some students' life. So I'm excited about it, and let's see how it goes.
Well, I'm sure you'll be out there inspiring a lot of them. So now this is a question that we ask all our guests. Let's start from the very beginning. What inspired your journey in law? Was there a specific reason why you chose to pursue it as a career?
Well, to be totally honest with you, I had never anticipated that I'm going to end up in law because not a lot of people know that my first degree was in economics. So I did economic honors from Delhi University first. And that immediately after that, I was so high on adrenaline about finance and economics that I always wanted to pursue something in economics. It was only coincidentally, nothing seemed to be working out. Coincidentally or uncoincidentally, after my bachelor's. So I thought, let me just give law a try for 6 months. I mean, there's nothing I could lose about it. And I thought, let me just try my hand with it and see where I end up with. And I may like it. If I don't like it, I am anyway going to pursue master's, but it is worth giving a shot. So I started doing law by that means, and I really got onto a hook with it. I mean, I really loved it, and that's how I ended up in law. I mean, especially, I have always been an avid reader. So when I started law, I thought, let me go dive in head first. So I started reading bare acts, a lot of commentaries. I kind of like feasted on it. I mean, a lot of commentaries were there to read, so much jurisprudence. I mean, that is something that was overwhelming initially, but later I realized I really enjoyed deep diving into what people have to say about different laws, the interpretation of laws. And it was only later in my journey that I realized that it was not just the reading aspect of it, but also the adversarial side of law. That is something that I really liked. And that is something I thought I have it in me. And something that I can pursue for a longer period of time. And it's going to keep my thirst for learning and growing alive for a long period of time. And that's how one thing led to the other. And I continued with my law journey.
That's beautiful. I mean, an organic connection. And I think you might be the first person to say, let's give law a shot for 6 months, because it's not an easy thing to take up. And I mean, it's beautiful how organically the connection grew through your passion for learning and trying to understand. But yes, I do see your point in how interesting the subject is, and getting to learn new information. It's always amazing.
Right.
Right. So during your time at Amity Law School, you participated in various moot court competitions, including the traditional moot, client counseling, trial advocacy, and mediation. So I have two major questions here. Firstly, what do you see as the advantages of participating in such competitions during undergrad? And secondly, what was the reasoning behind exploring different competition formats instead of sticking to just one and mastering it?
I mean, if I have to share my experience, I will be honest with you. I mean, what an experience that was. I mean, it was truly amazing for me. And I believe that is one of the best highlights of my law school. And when I was participating in those different competitions, it definitely instilled a sense of confidence in terms of public speaking and being able to stand in front of the audience, in front of the judge when you are being grilled, but at the same time, you're determined enough to put your point across and to convince them that that yes, you want to do that. What you're saying is right and does make sense. Like I said, it was definitely the best highlight of my law school. It did instill a sense of confidence in me, but at the same time, my basic intention behind participating in this competition is I wanted to test myself. How do I perform at a pan India stage? I wanted to go neck to neck with the best out there in some of the best law schools, and I wanted to see how do I do that, because it's very easy when you perform in internal moot court competitions within the law school, but my intention has always been to test myself against some of the best who are out there, and that was the first impetus for me to go out there, participate in some of the most difficult competitive moot court competitions. And I wanted to see myself. I wanted to give a reality check to me. Does it have it in me to go best to go neck to neck with some of the best? So that's my was my first impetus and intention behind participating, and it definitely instilled not just confidence but also a belief in myself that yes, I can do this, and there is an adversarial side in me that I can bring out when I participate in these competitions. Coming to the part two of the questions about exploring different competitions rather than just participating in one sort of a competition. Again, the idea that I got from these competitions is that you need to hone your skills. You need to bring out different skills which you have in you, which are required in a good advocate. So once I had participated in some of the big competition, for example, I started off participating in NALSA, which is a constitutional moot. I was awarded a best or oralist trophy there, and then I had subsequently participated in NLU Jodhpur, which is a competition law moot. Then again, I was awarded a best oralist trophy there. So after that, I realized a point in time that there is no point doing the same type of competitions again and again when I have achieved some sort of a satisfaction with it, if I were to say. So I thought, let me just try my hands at different competitions which would bring out or test my different skills. And that's when I decided I don't want to do moot court competitions anymore. I have had my cup of tea with moot court competitions, and I have participated in not just any regional competitions. I have participated in pan India level competitions. I've done well, but let me now see what I can do in other sort of competitions. And that's when I decided to dive into mediation competition, which is one of the most prominent one, which happens in RMNLU, I guess, in Lucknow. And there again, when I participated, I got the best team trophy with me. Then I thought, let me just try what else is out there. Let me try client counseling, or let me try oral advocacy competition or a trial advocacy competition. And then I participated in, I think there's a school called Kirti P. Mehta School who organizes a very good trial advocacy where you get an opportunity to cross-examine and chief examine a live witness. So that was a very good learning experience for me. I did that, and we prepared day and night for that competition because literally it was the very first of a kind experience. We didn't know how to go about chief and cross. So those were the impetus and the reasons behind it. I wanted to test myself against different scenarios. I wanted to test myself against different skills, because there is no point beating about the same bush, doing the same kind of competitions. When you participate in these competitions, what you're trying to achieve is you're trying to test yourself. You're trying to bring different skills to the surface. And that's what my idea was, that I don't want to do same kind of competitions. Let me try my hands at different competitions. And mind you, I mean, unlike students today who have got 5 years to experiment this, I had only 3 years. And in even during those 3 years, we weren't allowed to participate in the first semester and in the last semester. So I did all these competitions in like 2 years, if you were to say. Like so I had a lot to chew on, but it is what it is. So I thought, let me just go with all of my being in these competitions, and let's see what comes out of it.
That's spectacular, doing so many things and managing it with law school, which in itself is quite strenuous. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Throughout your LLB studies, you pursued several short courses as well, from GNLU and Columbia, and also underwent training with the ICC International Court of Arbitration. What motivated you to pursue these courses, and how did they shape your academic choices, and did they influence your decision in any way to pursue a foreign master's?
Well, I think how I started talking about having the thirst for knowledge, having thirst for jurisprudence, I had somewhat affinity always towards international law. And I wanted to, like I said, I always had it in me that I want to test myself at pan-India level. I want to test myself at international level. So the idea was to learn something which is not being taught in the classrooms. So the idea was, how do you give yourself an edge to against all other people who are at the same level at you in pan India level? What do you study? So you study subjects which nobody else is studying. You do courses which definitely gives you not just academic knowledge, but it has some sort of a transferable skill. So for example, if you see the course that I did at ICC, for example, which is International Chamber of Commerce, that's one of a kind course, and I don't think they do that anymore. It was, I was fortunate enough to have that while I was studying my masters, which we're going to talk about in some time. But I I went there in ICC building, and there was hand bunch of like 15-20 students, and they taught us how to go about arbitrations when you have ICC as the administrating institute. So these courses that I pursued were not just in the light of having the thirst for subjects which are outside the traditional subject, but also had some sort of a transferable skills attached to it. And when you think about your career as an advocate in the long term, the more transferable skills you have early on is something that's going to make you more employable. So you need to be employable before you get employment. So that's the idea behind it. So the more transferable skills you get, the better you are able to navigate yourself in terms of what I can do, I cannot do. So yeah, so intent affinity for international law, that's one. I wanted to get an exposure to international law and practice. So yes, they did play somewhat a little role towards me pursuing masters, but I would not say the entire role. But yes, I mean, it did raise a lot of curiosity in me in terms of, I need to explore this further. I need to learn more about it, and I can't keep on doing these short courses with it. So that's the curiosity that was risen in me because of these small courses.
Right. And transferable skills, I think that's a very important tip that students in law schools should focus on. These courses definitely will add a lot to not just your CV, but also your personality, if I'm not wrong. Now that we move on to the master's, the LLM, you decided to study at the London School of Economics, which has a prestigious international law program. What key factors did you consider while selecting this LLM program between different universities, and then what convinced you that LSE was the right choice?
Well, I think with masters, it is not as straightforward as students think it is. There needs to be some sort of a deliberation which needs to go in before you decide that you want to pursue masters. And because what you study during your masters decides your future course of action. Because I've seen students, they decide a particular university or a professor or a particular subject or a specialization in masters without thinking about how does it connect to what they have previously done as in their practices, or what they have studied, or what they want to pursue after they do their masters. So my shortlisting was, to be honest, based upon the area of law that I want to do. For example, if I want to pursue dispute resolution at an international stage, that was my first criteria for me being able to decide where do I want to study. So because with the area of law that you have decided, you know there are certain jurisdictions which have more opportunities than the other. So you decide according to that. For example, London being the hub of international disputes, I mean, that goes without a saying that if you want to study international disputes, it couldn't be a better place. Similarly, I would say somewhat New York is again a big hub for international disputes. So that was my first parameter, that I want to study international disputes. I want to do dispute resolution in the long run. And on the basis of that, I want to see. On the counterfactual, if I were to say you want to pursue something in data protection or on AI, copyrights. So you need to see the market accordingly. For example, if you want to do something tech related, you want to see yourself doing AI related stuff, then maybe studying in California would do well for you, because accordingly you'll be able to assimilate your knowledge with the practitioners there, right? So these are the things that you need to keep in mind. That was one of the biggest factors for me. Second of all, of course, was the professors, the curriculum. That's something we often tend to overlook. I was very meticulous in the sense I want to know about the subjects, what they're teaching during their masters. I want to go through the curriculum of what they teach in that particular subject. For example, if I have a thirst for international arbitration, I want to see in what detail they are teaching international arbitration. I don't want to have an overview. I'm not going for a master's to have an overview of a subject. That's not the idea behind it. When you are studying a master's degree, that means a specialization of some sort. So you always want to study as in depth as possible with all the concepts of it. So that was my idea. I wanted to also understand what do the professors do, how much experience they have in teaching these subjects. So with LSE, I knew Professor Jan Kleinester-Kamp. He currently does not teach, but he used to teach when I was studying masters. He had been teaching at LSE for quite a long time. He had a legacy with him. So that was another factor for me, how I listed down where I want to study. And the third and the most important factor, I would say, is the industry connection, which again goes back to the area of law. How close you are to the industry where you want to work, and how is that correlated to the area of law? If I'm studying in London, if I'm studying in LSE, or let's say Queen Mary, or let's say King's College or UCL for that matter, I am surrounded by the industry in which I want to work in. So that's another thing that people tend to overlook, because the idea behind masters is, again, of course, at some point you would want to be employable. You want to get an employment in that industry. So look at that. Look at the industry. Where does the industry work? I'm not going to say that you shouldn't be pursuing masters in different cities in UK, or I'm not going to discourage anyone not to do that. But the point is, you need to be near to the industry where you want to work. That's the idea behind it. And that because a lot of these universities, they tend to have university industry tie-ups, and that can really click with you. And we're going to talk about in a moment, but studying with these universities put you at some sort of a pedestal, and it helps you bridge that gap between academia and the industry. So those were the few of the factors that I thought I need to look into before I shortlist any of the schools. It may make sense to people, it may not make sense to people, but that's my criteria. And I would suggest, if anybody is looking in a medium to long-term perspective, these are the factors that people should definitely have into account.
Right. And with regards to the LLM application, the statement of purpose is a very critical component. So how did you approach writing your SOP for LSE, and what elements do you believe made it stand out to the admissions committee?
To be honest, I had literally like 20 to 30 iterations of my SOP, and I made a lot of people read my SOPs. Of course, only the close ones, like my family members, my relatives, because the thing with SOP is that it needs to tell a story. It needs to connect what you were doing in the past, what you want to do in the present, and how it's going to help you in the future. So it needs to connect all three dots. And you need to craft your own SOP. You are the best author of your own story. Some of the tips I always give to students is be honest in SOP. Don't try to take a story from someone because he has done it, or these are the reasons that I understood from him for doing a master, then I should be doing that too for the same reason. So have your own story, have a short term and a medium term and a long term plan of what you want to do with your LLM. That's what universities want to know. They want to understand how you're going to use their masters, how you're going to use their name of the university, and what are your plans in the short term and medium term. They really want to know that. So that is something that I always advise. Be very clear in terms of what you want to pursue with that master's. Some of the basic things that I see students overlooking is follow the guidelines to the dot in terms of number of pages, fonts, structure. And sometimes universities, they tend to give some sort of a pointers what they want to know from you in the SOP. please follow that. If you want to go on your own tangent, not telling them what they want to know in the SOP, they're not even going to consider that. So please follow the guidelines that the universities are providing, follow that to the dot, be honest with it. Do not borrow someone else's idea of why you want to study in LLM. Try to craft your own story, and try to be as transparent as possible. It's okay not to have the entire clarity. I believe a lot of people who are drafting these SOPs, not everybody has an entire roadmap of what they want to do, but at least in the medium term, you should have somewhat an idea of what you want to do with the degree, and universities want to know that. So I would always suggest that have some sort of a roadmap and put that on a piece of paper. That will go a long way.
That's smart. And how long did you have to write this SOP?
Well, I would always suggest take roughly about 3 to 4 months to write an SOP.
Right.
Because the SOP is something, it does not craft itself like one day you wake up and you suddenly start writing the SOP and you have the entire story with you. It doesn't work like that. You have to rework it. You have to think about it. You start with the bullet points. That's how I started it. You start with the bullet points. You cover different sections that you want to say. For example, if you want to talk about the university, societies, or curriculum, or professors, then you make certain bullet points on that, and then you start drafting of what do you want to say about that? What do you want to say about job prospects? What do you want to say about industry connections? What do you want to say about how your current practicing in particular region is going to relate to what you want to study? How your future practice is going to study? So you start by bullet points, and then you slowly and steadily prepare something which is like a rough draft number 1, 2, 3, and so on. So give yourself some time. I would always say, don't be impatient with it. Give yourself some time. Start early. Don't think that SOP is something you can do last minute, because great things, when you write them on paper, take time. They do take time. If you want to produce a refined version of something, it will take time. So have some buffer time in advance, and plan in advance how you want to start it and by what time you want to finish it.
Right. That's great advice. And regarding letters of recommendation, I think that's also very important along with the SOP. How did you decide who to approach, and what advice would you give to students, particularly those who have work experience, on selecting the best recommendation for their application?
Again, with letter of recommendations, first and the foremost thing that anybody should do is to follow the university guidelines. So for some of the masters I've seen, especially masters in US, they do require letter of recommendations from the places that you have worked in. So from someone who is your senior or partner level person, they do require professional letters of recommendations. And along with that, they require academic letters of recommendation. So it all comes down to what are the university guidelines about it, what are they seeking in letter of recommendation, what is the procedure, and everything to that sort. The 3 points that are most important to me in terms of letter of recommendation is, first, you need to see the subject matter that you want to pursue in the LLM. You're somewhat getting the letter of recommendation from the person who has taught you that, because he would be the best judge to tell any prospective employer or university that I have taught this person, this pupil is very well versed in the subject. I have taught him. He has experience in this area of law. So see that. Not a lot of people see at that angle, and that's something that I explored. Second is that they should be able to have a judgment of your analytical ability, because all of these master's courses, they see how much analytical ability you have, and the professor who is writing a letter of recommendation, he should be the best judge of your analytical ability, and not in just of law concepts, but your ability to find out, to follow through the case studies. How does your reasoning work? They should be able to put that on the paper. And obviously, last but not the least, they should be a good judge of your caliber and potential, because that's how they're going to put it on the paper, that I believe that he's someone who can do really well with your master's program. And be honest with them. I believe, again, people leave it to the last minute. Be honest with your professors, and give them a timely notice. Please do that. Students think that they can just do this last minute. Everyone wants to have some time before they can curate something for you. So have it. Always give them sufficient time. Put them on notice, and see where it goes from there.
Right. And In the past interviews, someone had given us an advice that it's best that you approach the teachers who you may have done a teacher's assistantship under or a research assistantship under. Could you comment on that? Preferable to choose professors who you've worked under before?
Well, I mean, it depends. See, at the end of the day, like I said, it depends upon who can judge, who is able to judge your analytical abilities, who is able to judge what kind of student you are, what kind of student of the law you are, and how quickly you are able to grasp issues of the law. If you have worked under someone as a teaching assistant or you have worked under someone in research positions, then obviously that person is able to lay it on the paper that yes, this person is quite well versed with the areas, this area of law, or he's a quick study basically. So, I mean, it all depends. If, for example, if someone has not done any of those positions, then for them, the de facto position is to go back to the professors who have taught them. So not everybody has that luxury of going back to people who under whom they have had teaching assistant positions or they have done some research. If you have that, excellent, go for that. But if you don't have that, then the de facto position is you need to go back to the professors who have taught you, with whom you have interacted really well. They have seen your class participation and they can vouch for your caliber and potential.
That totally makes sense. And based on your experience, what common mistakes do students make during the application process? And how can they avoid that?
I think that the most common mistake that I see with the master applications is that people haven't put in sufficient research into their application. So when I say research, it goes from all the way from learning about the subjects, about the professors, about the societies that the universities have to offer, and their industry connections, how university has been doing in a particular area of law, what kind of publications they have done. So I have often seen that nowadays people tend to be very superficial in terms of the research. So that's one of the biggest mistake I would say people are doing it, and they should stop doing it right away. I mean, you need to be extremely thorough in your research about the master's program, about the professors, about the subjects. The more thorough you are in your research, the better you're able to express it in your SOPs and any other applications that you're making. And that's an impression the person who is reading those applications immediately get, that you have done your research. You have gone to the extent of writing about a particular seminar that a university did on a particular area of law. So that's the amount of research you should be doing, and it shows in your application. So that's one, that you should always don't take research for granted when you're making applications. Second point, and I would say, is, like I said, have some sort of a roadmap, have a medium to long term roadmap. Universities want to see that. They want to see what you're going to do with their degree, how it's going to fit into your long term plans, how it's going to be a linchpin for you to achieve your ambitions, how it's going to be a stepping stone. So have some sort of a clarity and a roadmap. Don't just say, I want to pursue studies for XYZ reasons and that's it. What after that? How are you going to capitalize on the degree? How are you going to use the industry name? How are you going to use the university name? That's second. Third is that, like I said, be very specific and selfish about what areas of law you want to do. I always say that. Don't just go for any areas of law that you believe that are quite in the market trend or something like that. Don't do that, because what you will end up having is that you have studied subjects of law that you don't yourself don't have any passion in. So don't do that. I've seen students going for courses they believe are quite up and coming, and they just want to do it because they believe that everyone is doing it, or they see everyone doing it. So don't do those. Always pursue subjects that you are most connected to and you believe you can do something in those subject areas. So those are the 3 pointers I believe if you keep in mind while making these applications, the chances of going wrong is extremely less. I would not say you cannot go wrong. You can go wrong, but the chances are extremely less.
Wow. Okay, that's good advice. Universities across the globe, they often require foreign students to provide proof of English proficiency. Did you take the TOEFL or the IELTS, or did you seek like a waiver? What would you recommend is the most suitable options for students who are aiming to study in the UK?
Right. I mean, so seeking a waiver is a tenuous process. I would rather suggest anyone who wants to pursue masters is to just sit for the exam. It is unfortunate that we as students of Indian law schools have to sit for these exams. This is something that has expressed my dissatisfaction with often, because I believe majority of the law schools nowadays in India are teaching in English. Their mode of language is in English, and still we are required to give a proof of how good we are in English. That's quite paradoxical and ironical, I would say. But I did not seek a waiver. I sat for IELTS, and I thought this is just the straight way of putting the numbers on the table. I told them that I'm going to sit for it, and then once I sat for it, I presented the results to the university, and which were accepted. So I would always suggest that sit for these exams, because some of these exams scores are in value for more than just one particular year. I think IELTS is valuable for 2 or 3 years, if I'm not wrong. So these do come in handy when you're applying for job applications, because you can state that you have some sort of fluency in English, and you're comfortable with all aspects of English language, not just speaking or reading or any other for that matter. So it does come in handy. It adds a way to your application. So just sit for it.
Right. Okay. So during the master's program, you interned with UK-based firms. How did you secure these opportunities, and what strategies would you recommend for maximizing on such experiences?
Again, there are different anecdotes. I mean, I can share some of the anecdotes with you. The idea behind interning while you are studying is something which is not new to Indian students. They have been doing it in Indian universities. But the idea is, again, like I said, you need to be working not just in any XYZ places. You need to be working in places which connect to what you're studying. That's extremely important. I had several of my pupils in my masters who were just doing it internships for the sake of it, but they did not have had some sort of a plan that how these internships are going to help them in the future or something like that. So what I did was I used to always think, what is the common connection that I can have between me, my university, or the person that I want to intern with, or the person that I'm seeking position with. So I used to always see, is there a common element in any of these scenarios? If there is, I would like to explore that and try to monetize it, in the sense that I'm getting an internship position out of it, or I'm getting a work experience out of it. For example, if I were to share with you, one of the work experiences that I did during my master's was with Withers Worldwide, which is a media law firm here in UK. So one of the partners who works in PIL, Investment Treaty Arbitration, he was an alumni of LSE. He did his master's at LSE. That is something that I found out. Because I was the vice president of the Arbitration Society at LSE, I thought of curating an event just for the sake of inviting him. I mean, I thought, let me create an event where I can invite industry legends or industry veterans who are doing quite well at the top of their firms, and they have some sort of an industry, they have some sort of an LSE connection as well. And that's when you get to have a face-to-face or a personal session with them. Of course, we had a very good panel discussion out of it at LSE. It was a huge event, but I get to make an elevator pitch to those partners and see if they are willing to offer a work experience. And one of them did come back to me and say, yes, that's all right, you can come to us and we will give you a work experience. So it's just about exploring what you can use that you have currently, like your area of law, your connections, your university's connections with the industry, your connections. If you use all these things together, you are able to secure somewhat a work experience in the area of law that you want to work in the long term, and that would help you really in the medium to short long term.
That's such a unique idea, though. I mean, it's like the prime example of creating the opportunities that you want, rather than just depending on luck or solely just a network that someone has set up for you. That's quite inspiring. So, as a triple qualified lawyer in England, India, and Ireland, which in itself it's amazing. Can you share your journey from undergrad studies in India to qualifying as a lawyer in the UK?
Yeah, that would take a lot of time for us, but I'm going to I'm going to trim that journey. Well, first of all, it was obviously an interesting one, and long and arduous. With, I mean, obviously, it was full of obstacles. There were times when I was really low. I mean, there were times when I didn't know what to do, how to figure it out. But one thing that I understood was if you want to work in international disputes, you want to work at an international stage, you need to have a dual qualification. That is something that came to me when I was trying to make my way into the UK industry after my master's. I understood that it is kind of an imperative that you have some sort of a dual qualification. And once that realization dawned upon me, I mean, I did not leave any stone unturned with getting qualified in UK. So just after I cleared my masters and I started working in a city firm here in Gresham Legal, I was doing work on investment treaty arbitration. So there was a challenge of an investment treaty arbitration award. And then once I finished that experience, just before COVID hit, I returned briefly to Kuala Lumpur for doing some sort of a work experience with KIAC. But at that time, COVID was at its peak, so I was quite afraid. I thought, let me use this period of COVID to make myself more skillful in terms of getting that second qualification. So that's when I thought, when everybody's inside, nobody's working. So let me capitalize on it. So at that point of time, it struck me that I can stay at home, I can study, and then at the same time, I can work from home. So during 2020, I took the decision to educate myself for UK qualification. I studied through it. I sat for it, and then voila, by 2021, I was qualified solicitor. And once I had crossed over into UK qualifications, I immediately saw that there were some results coming out of it. People were trying to gauge with me. They were trying to see how I can be of help to them, not just in Indian market, but also in the UK market. So it was a long journey, but I believe that qualification in UK did help me. It helped me get my foot into the door in the UK legal industry, because unless and until you're qualified, it is extremely tough for you to make your headway into the UK legal industry. So I had understood that if you want to work at an international stage, it is kind of an imperative thing, and you have to just do it, no matter how long it takes. So yeah, that's what happened. Eventually, I qualified as a UK lawyer. One thing I would add here is that when I came here, when I was working in my current position, I started also learning towards high rights of audience. This is something that can't be emphasized enough, because I always had this thirst in me for advocacy. I thought I want to go ahead, not just being a solicitor, but have a high rights of audience. So high rights of audience is something that you get when you go through a rigorous course and you have to start for an examination before the course providers, and you have to argue an application before a judge, and they judge you on the basis of your cross-examination skills and oral advocacy skills. So I did that as well, and which basically brings me at par with the barrister, because I now have the audience to argue in any court of UK. So that's something that slowly and steadily I realized. And as I realized, I started keeping abreast with it and making my moves as to how can I make myself more employable.
Right. So that's amazing. I mean, the way you were using your time, like you didn't have a moment of rest even during COVID. But I guess that's an inspiring way to go about things. So, but moving to a new country and completely shifting your life from India to UK must have been a challenging and an overwhelming situation. Like, so how did you adapt to life in the UK, both personally and academically? And did you face any challenges? How did you learn how to overcome them?
Well, I mean, first talking about personally, I can say for sure there would be moments when you would be homesick, because in the type of culture and the society that we come from in India, we always tend to have people around us. We have relatives, we have family members, and when you come to UK, it's reality suddenly hits you that you are alone in this, and you have to make your way through all the rejections, everyone competing at a cutthroat competition, and you just have to go through all of it alone. And what I did on all those instances is I made sure that I keep myself engaged. I keep myself doing things which take more of my time rather than thinking of that I'm feeling homesick. So I took a add-on language course along with my studies, I studied Spanish at LSE Language Center. So that helped me cover some of my time. At the same time, I was vice president of the Arbitration Society. So I had some events to run for that as well. So it's just about how you manage the situations. I'm not saying it's wrong not to feel homesick or something like that, or to feel homesick, but it's just that the 9 months of your masters, they go through so fast. They go through so fast before you realize that you need to be on your toes all the time, all the time. If you skip some time, it just flies off. So you need to capitalize as much as you can. Academically, yes, it was daunting. You need to be top of your readings. You want to be prepared, because you don't want to make a fool of yourself when the classes are going on and you don't have a clue of what is being discussed and everything. So you need to be academically aware of what your interactions are with the professors, because they are always on top of these things. They are always on top of these things. They are the masters of these courses. So you have to put in a sort of a hard work, where you get accustomed to having more readings, and always dive head first. That's my principle. Always dive head first. You will feel lost, and that's important part of the process. But you need to be lost first to be found. I mean, that's how I look at it. You need to be lost first, to figure out how and why I'm doing these things and how I'm going to do that.
That's quite amazing to hear. Being lost is how you find yourself in a way. It's amazing. So, but the cost of studying abroad can also be a major concern for many students. How did you manage your finance during your time at LSE? Any financial advice or something you can share about the same?
I believe finance is something which is very subjective and very personal to everyone who is studying abroad, because obviously these courses are not cheap. I mean, the accommodation, London itself is not cheap. And we think that we will be able to manage and everything, but it is expensive. It is extremely expensive. But few of the things that I did was I was apprised of certain discounts that you get because of the virtue of being a student of a university. For example, in terms of transportation, what I did on day one when I came to London was that I bought a bike. I bought a bicycle. That was on day one. The first thing that I did was, I'm not going to spend money in transportation. I'm just going to cycle my way through. So on day one, the first thing that I did, I went and I bought a bicycle, and that was my mode of transportation for next 9 months. And so that was my way of ensuring that I can save some of the money. Apart from that, a lot of students did explore some student cards. There are student oyster cards in London that you can enroll for because you are a student at a university. That does give you a lot of discount over transportation. And then, of course, there are other perks available to some university students in terms of food vouchers. I mean, all those things. I don't know how much of it does make a difference, but I believe when you're a student, everything makes a difference. I mean, every small bit counts, because the pressure that you have on you is huge. It's huge. And when you're studying those expensive degrees, it's always sticking in your mind that I'm spending more and spending more, and without any certainty of when it's going to come back. So every bit counts. I would say be a little frugal. I would not say be a miser, but be a little spendthrift in the sense that, see, if there is a cost efficient way of doing it, do that. Don't 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 think of that I'm the elitist or I'm going to flaunt or something like that. If there are cost efficient ways of doing something, do that. And you just, yeah, see all the perks that you can explore. If you can do that, you'll be fine.
Right. So your LinkedIn posts, as I've seen them, they highlight a lot of opportunities for Indian qualified practitioners, and which is extremely helpful. And this brings us to the next set of questions that we'll be discussing. So the UK offers a graduate visa, which allows international students to stay for at least 2 years after completing their course. In your experience, is this time sufficient, or what strategies would you suggest for making the most of this time?
I mean, in terms of sufficient or not sufficient, let me start by saying that I only got a 4 months. Okay. So when I look at that, 2 years is a long time. I only had 4 months of post study work visa. So I had to work my way through anything and everything possible in those 4 months. So when I look at it from that angle, 2 years is a long time. But at the same time, what I see is that when you have such a long period of time, you tend to get a little complicit that no, I have long time, I can figure things out. 2 years is still far. So everyone that I talk to nowadays, I always suggest that start early, start as early as possible, because especially in UK, the thing is that you want to jump off the student work post-study work visa. You don't want to be in that visa. You want to be on another visa, which is called a skilled worker visa, basically. So which is like a working visa. So you want to start as soon as possible, and you need to make yourself be in a position where you have sufficient time to transit into a visa that's going to allow you to stay here and work. You don't want to leave things end minute. So like I said, be on your toes as soon as the clock starts. Don't wait for the D-Day. But at the same time, my tips would be to connect with as many people as possible in your area of law. Go to networking events, reach out to people, see how they can help you, shortlist forms, and see if there are any opportunities, and look at it from that perspective. I mean, very less people have this perspective, in the sense, look at it from the perspective whether the firms are looking to grow. Are they looking to expand? Because if they are, if you follow them on, if you follow their news and their articles and everything, you tend to get a sense whether they're trying to expand or not. And if they are, you need to be in the right place at the right time. You need to put forward your application and see how they respond. That's only so much you can do, but you need to have your research in place, and make sure you have everything in place in time.
Makes sense. And after your time at Gresham, you returned to India briefly, and then you moved back to London working for Albertson. So, how easy or difficult was this transition back and forth, both personally and professionally?
It's not easy. I mean, I'll say it's not easy. I mean, I worked here in London, then I transited back to India. I worked there. Fortunately, where I worked in India also gave me an opportunity to work on arbitration cases, which is something that keeps me alive. So it was a good thing. But how how I looked at it was that instead of applying straight away from India to some of the firms here, which is quite a challenge. I mean, they don't look at applications where people are not based in UK. So how I worked it out was that I kept my connections alive. Whoever I had connected to when I was here, when I was studying here, whether I had connected through conferences or meetings or work experiences, I kept those connections alive. Even when I was in India, I kept them apprised that I'm now dual qualified lawyer. I've qualified to be a UK solicitor, and I'm looking for opportunities to come back to UK. So you keep those opportunities alive, and you keep them apprised of the progress that you are making. Once you do that, you will often find that some of the opportunities are there which might be suitable for you, and you just need to latch onto them. And so don't close your connections. Even if you get to move back to India, keep your connections open. If you want to work, come back here and work. Keep those connections alive, and sooner or later you will see that there are opportunities which are associated with the people you're connected to that open up, and then you just need to capitalize on that.
So it's very important to have like a good established network and also remain constantly in contact with them. You are the co-chair of the Young Members Group of Energy Disputes Arbitration Center. Could you tell us more about this organization and your role there?
Right. So EDAC is Energy Disputes Arbitration Center, which is based in Istanbul, Turkey. So this is one of the pioneer institutes who deals in energy disputes, be it arbitration or mediation or any other sort of alternative dispute resolution. They are at the helm of making sure that all energy disputes come to them. And they are very well positioned, in the sense they are at the cusp of Europe and Asia alongside Middle East. So they believe that they are quite well positioned in geographically to handle these kinds of disputes. So it's a quite a new thing in arbitration industry, I believe, and they're doing quite well. They are currently, I think, organizing Istanbul Arbitration Week next week. That's the week following, I think, week starting 30th of September, and this is their second or third edition. So they're doing quite well. They needed someone to co-chair the young group, which is Young EDAC. And Young EDAC is, again, like any other young group of any arbitration institute, is involved in engaging with more young practitioners who are interested in knowing about energy disputes, energy arbitration. And they needed someone to spearhead it, someone who has had experience in the past. Earlier, I was a vice chairperson of another young members group, so I thought, let me try going from vice position to a main position. So I thought, let me try my hand at it. Some of the tasks that I'm given with is, of course, we are organizing some fantastic events during Istanbul Arbitration Week, which is next, like I said, week starting 30th of September. So we have young EDAC events planned during the Istanbul Arbitration Week. Apart from that, I'm tasked with the responsibility of organizing some committees who are going to help take the young EDAC forward, organizing a national level energy arbitration moot, which is called as what settle moot. It's again a first of a kind energy disputes oriented moot. That is something I'm spearheading as well. And in general, of course, like any other young arbitration group, we are trying to create awareness about young EDAC through webinars and seminars. And it's a work in progress. I've been appointed for 2 years. We have been given some roadmap that we need to work on, and let's see where we end up with.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, energy law dispute, correct me if I'm wrong, is definitely a very growing field. We recently had a moot competition, I think the Paras Diwan competition, that's based on energy law, and my friend was doing it. It's a very interesting concept and a topic in itself. Very cool. So, besides EDAP, you're also a young member, as you mentioned, of various other groups such as YICCA and YIAG. What are the benefits of being a member of such groups, and how can one capitalize on these memberships?
I think if I were to be honest with you, I mean, all of these positions, when you're part of these groups, obviously they tend to help you with profile raising opportunities, whether it is through publications or participation in webinars, seminars, especially when it comes to giving you unique opportunities to interact with senior members, senior practitioners. You get a close ear with them. You tend to get opportunities to talk to them in person, one to one. These are the opportunities that otherwise you don't generally get in your daily course of life. So I have always suggested everyone who has come to me for these things like membership, what do we do with it? I have always advised them that how you capitalize these positions, these membership is extremely important. You need to think about what you need to get out of these memberships. If it is mentorship, then be very evident about it and make sure that you get a lot out of those mentorship. If it is publication opportunities, then make sure you go get those publication opportunities. Don't be a passive member of these organizations, is what I'm trying to say. A lot of people join these organizations, these young groups, and they're just passive member on a paper that we are part of this. But what are you doing to contribute to these groups, or what are you doing through these groups for yourself, is something that you need to be asking. It feels nice to say on a paper that yes, you are part of such and such group, but what are you doing to capitalize that membership is something that you need to keep asking yourself. So that's two bits from me.
Right, makes sense. This brings us to the almost end of our podcast. Looking back, is there anything that you would have done differently during your LLM journey, or any advice that you wish you had received before starting, which is basically something you would want to tell to the incoming students for?
This again goes back to the point that you need to ask yourself, why are you doing your masters, right? I mean, there has been a split opinion on the point whether you should do some practice before pursuing masters. I mean, in the hindsight, I think I would have done a little better if I had some experience before doing my master's. Not that I abhor how things turned out, but it's just that I feel that once you have some sort of experience under your belt, you're trying to make better sense of things. And that's something I might have done. I'm not sure that I would have definitely gone for it, but something that I might have explored, not doing master straight after my undergrad. So that's one thing in the hindsight I believe I might change. I'm not sure of that anyway. But I would always recommend that treat your masters as a crown jewel. I mean, look at your masters as a stepping stone who's going to help you in the long term. Don't think of it like I'm just going to do my masters and straight away the doors will open. It doesn't work like that. Think of it in the long term. Be prepared about what you want to do in the medium term, what you want to do in the long term. And especially if you want to pursue something in international disputes and arbitration, be ready for fierce competition. It is extremely competitive. It is extremely competitive with the industry that I work here in London. It's a cutthroat competition, not only because we are competing against the local practitioners who are English law lawyers, but also everyone is pouring in. Everyone from all parts of the world is pouring in, and everyone wants to work in international disputes. Everyone wants to have a bite of it. So it's extremely competitive. Be ready for that competition. And if you want to pursue international disputes and arbitration, be ready to go the long way, to put in the hard work. That's something that I always say to everyone. It might take some time, but you will definitely get your foot into the door if you are persistent enough, if you are ready to put in the hard work. I will never say it is impossible. So don't be so hard on yourself. Be patient with yourself. Have a foresight and work towards that foresight. And like there's a quote. I mean, it's a quote in Hindi. I can say that. It's like you need to be facing obstacles. Only once you do that, you will be able to find answers. So be ready for the long game and keep putting the daily hustle, and you will eventually find yourself doing okay, if not good, and that's fine.
Thank you so much, sir. That keeps us at peace. But with regards to this competition, how do you, what advice would you give for someone to differentiate themselves from the crowd? Is it skill building? Is it experiences? What would help them, to do something different from the competition that already exists in this field?
Well, I think what we need to then see in the hindsight is, or in the foresight is, what are we trying to achieve by differentiating ourselves? Is it that we want to get an admission into something, or is this like we're trying to applying for a job, or is it we're trying to enter into an industry? What are we trying to achieve? What is the end goal? And then you decide what you should be doing to make yourself stand out, right? For example, let's just say I wanted to work in international disputes industry. I wanted to differentiate from all other people who are applying for the same industry. So I took a dual qualification. That gives me some sort of an edge, right? Beyond all other people. So you first need to identify the goal, and then you need to see what you want to do that's going to help you stand out. For example, a lot of students pursue foreign languages. Foreign languages, I can't tell you how underrated they are in international disputes, but how much competitive edge it can bring to your profile. It is so underrated in India. I mean, the proficiency with which people here speak Spanish, French, German, and Arabic, and the skill set that they have in these languages, not just in one languages, but in multiple languages, and that edge that they have because of having a mastery in those languages is something that is insurmountable. You, with no matter how proficient you are in English, you cannot surmount that edge that another person has because of having a mastery in a foreign language. It immediately makes them employable in a dispute involving a Spanish party or a French party or an Arabic party for that matter. And that is something you cannot do. So think about what you're trying to achieve, and then decide how what you're doing is going to give you an edge. That is extremely important. Otherwise, if you keep on following in anybody else's footsteps, that just because he's doing it, I'm also going to do that course, you're not going to be able to monetize it. You're not going to be able to make the best out of it. So that's my advice. Identify what you're trying to achieve, where you're trying to get into, and then see what should I do extra that's going to give me an edge.
That's wonderful advice, sir. Thank you so much. And this brings us to the end of our podcast. I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to you for being here. Of course, your journey was inspiring, but the advice that you gave, I think that surmounted anything that's something that would inspire and teach a lot of students who are incoming for an LLM journey. So thank you so much for coming on to our podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
I wish you all the best. And yes, and I wish you and the Project LM all the best for the future episodes and your onward journey.
Thank you so much. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope you found today's discussion as enlightening as I did. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, rate, and leave us a comment. Thank you.